They tried to silence my voice, bury my truth, and drown my name beneath their noise. But today, I rise not to fight them, but to free myself. The world has watched my steps, as if every breath I took was a chapter they owned, a story they controlled, a destiny they believed they had the power to shape. They thought my silence meant defeat. They mistook my patience for surrender. They confused my calm with weakness. But storms do not speak before they arrive. They come quietly, and then everything changes. I walk through years of shadows wrapped in gold, where applause echoed louder than truth, and expectations towered taller than dreams. People bowed to my title, not my soul. They saw the crown, but never the weight. They admired the height, but never the climb. They followed my footsteps, but never felt the stones that cut beneath them. And through it all, their whispers crawled behind me, soft, poisonous, patient, ready to strike. When they believed I was alone, they tried to define me through rumors written by hands that never touched my life, never knew my heart, never understood my silence. They built stories out of shadows, hoping the world would forgive my light. They mistook my kindness for blindness. They believed their lies could cage me. But a man who walks with truth does not fear the echoes of broken voices. Every betrayal they crafted, every wound they aimed, every trap they set, I carried them quietly, not as pain, but as lessons written with fire instead of ink. They did not know that the desert teaches its sons how to survive storms that would break lesser men. They did not know that my silence was not retreat, it was preparation. And today, for the first time, I am no longer speaking as a prince to his people, nor as a leader to his land, but as a man who has finally unchained the story they tried to bury. This is not revenge. This is release. This is not confession. This is clarity. And what I say today will not just be heard. It will be felt. Because I am not telling my truth to be believed. I am telling it because it is mine. Today, I stand before the world, not to prove myself, but to free myself from the weight of silence I carried for too long. If they wanted my destruction, they should have taken my breath. Because as long as I can speak, I can rise. And as long as I can rise, their darkness cannot win. Today, I finally tell the truth. They watched me fall in silence, mistaking my quiet steps for broken ones. They looked at my lowered gaze and believed I had surrendered to their shadows. But a man who bows his head is not always defeated. Sometimes he is gathering strength from places only his soul can reach. Sometimes he is listening to the whispers of destiny that others are too loud to hear. I walked through days that felt heavier than years, carrying truths I could not speak, carrying wounds I could not show. People saw the calm on my face, not the storms in my chest. They saw my smile, but never the weight it carried to stay alive. They saw the prince, not the man, and so they assumed that power protected me from human pain. But even a king bleeds in silence. They tried to break me with the softness of doubt, with words sharpened into invisible knives, with stories painted in colors I never wore. They whispered behind curtains, thinking their voices would never reach my walls. But whispers travel where shouts cannot, and every lie they sowed flowered into truths that revealed them, not me. There were moments when trust felt like a luxury I could not afford. Moments when the closest hands held the deepest betrayal. It wasn't enemies who stabbed first. No, it was the ones I welcomed, the ones I believed, the ones who knew the softest parts of my armor. They broke pieces of me I didn't know could break. They carved silence into my voice and expected me to forget the taste of healing. But I learned something they never prepared for. That resilience is not born in comfort, nor in admiration, nor in applause. Resilience grows in the darkest corners of the soul, in the places where pain sits quietly and waits to be understood. Resilience grows in the nights when you stand alone against the weight of your own heart. Resilience grows when the world takes from you everything but your breath, and you still rise because you refuse to let them own your final step. I saw their traps, their plans, their carefully crafted stories, designed to make me collapse under their illusion of victory. But they forgot something. I was raised not only to rule a land, but to command my own spirit. I was raised by the desert, by the wind, by silence itself. Silence that teaches more than speeches ever could. The desert taught me that even the sun must set to rise stronger. And I rose. I rose quietly. I rose patiently. I rose in a way they never expected, because they believed the crown created me. They never understood that my heart did. So I let them think they had one. I let them celebrate their illusions. I let them dance with the shadows they mistook for victory. All the while, I protected the truth like a flame, cupped in my hands, safe from their winds. And today, that flame becomes fire, not to burn them, but to illuminate me, not to destroy, but to cleanse, not to scream, but to free the voice they tried so hard to silence. I am not speaking because the world demands it. I am speaking because my soul deserves it. There comes a moment in every journey when silence is no longer strength, when patience is no longer peace, when carrying the weight becomes heavier than releasing it. And I reached that moment, not in anger, not in revenge, but in truth, truth that refused to stay caged any longer. They believed they could write my destiny with their assumptions, shape my image with their lies, and bury my truth beneath their narratives. But the soul is not soil. It is sky. And no matter how many storms they sent, my sky refused to forget the color of its light. I remember the days their words followed me like shadows glued to my feet, trying to mimic my steps, trying to dim my path. Every headline, every whisper, every false story was another attempt to carve doubt into my name. But doubt is a fragile weapon against a man who knows himself. They said I was broken. They said I was finished. They said I had fallen from the place they themselves created for me. But they never understood that falling is only dangerous for those who don't know how to fly again. And I learned to fly using the wings they tried to break. I carried my pain with a grace they mistook for emptiness. I walked through my storms with a calm they mistook for weakness. I guarded my heart with silence they mistook for guilt. But the truth is, I chose silence Because some truths become more powerful when they grow in the dark. Their betrayal did not kill me. It sharpened me. It carved strength into the softest parts of my being. It shaped my spirit into something even they could not recognize. They thought they were burying me, but they were watering a seed. They underestimated the fire they created, the resilience they awakened, the clarity they forced upon me. Because when you lose everything you thought mattered, you finally see what truly matters. And what mattered was never their approval, their applause, their acceptance. What mattered was the truth I carried quietly, patiently, fearlessly, waiting for the day I would let it speak. And today, the truth stands taller than every lie they tried to build. The truth breathes louder than every rumor they tried to spread. The truth shines brighter than every shadow they tried to place around my name. They tried to destroy me by attacking my silence. But they forgot that silence is not emptiness. Silence is preparation. Silence is reflection. Silence is the birthplace of strength that does not need noise to be felt. Today, I do not speak as the man they tried to break. I speak as the man their betrayal helped me become. And this version of me is stronger, clearer, braver, and truer than anything they could ever imagine. The truth is rising, and nothing they do can stop its voice now. They broke my name. They twisted my story. They painted my silence as weakness. But they forgot a heart trained in sandstorms doesn't fear dust. They tried to bury my voice under rumors, under shadows, under lies crafted by trembling hands. But truth has a strange habit. It glows through every crack, like desert light at dawn. I walked again into the world, not to prove them wrong, but to remind myself that no throne is higher than self-respect, and no enemy is stronger than a man's own doubts. Once defeated, in the middle of Sheikh Hamdan's stall, where horses breathe like warriors, and silence feels like royalty, I stood still, and I felt every wound transform into strength, every betrayal turn into clarity, every loss turn into a lesson. They tried to destroy me, yes, but I rebuilt myself, with hands that refused to shake, with a soul that refused to bend, with courage stitched from every scar they gifted me. And when I looked around, I realized I didn't just survive the storm, I became it. My voice rose, not like a whisper, but like a call across dunes. I am still here. And the world turned to listen. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't anger. This was rebirth. Raw, real, and unstoppable. They feared the day my voice would rise again, because truth has a sharp edge, sharper than swords, cleaner than fire, and impossible to cage. They whispered in corners. They moved like shadows, trying to rewrite my story with trembling lies. But a lie repeated 1,000 times still fears the moment. A single truth steps into daylight at Sheikh Hamdan's stall, where the air hums with legacy, and every hoofprint feels like history speaking. I finally opened the book they tried to burn. My own story. I told the truth, not to hurt, not to expose, not to show power, but to breathe again, without chains around my name. I spoke of how they broke me, how they used silence as a weapon, how they smiled in daylight, but stabbed in the shade, I spoke of the betrayals that almost blinded me, and the lessons that finally opened my eyes. And as the truth left my lips, I felt the world shift, just a little, but enough, because the truth is not loud. It doesn't shout, doesn't scream, doesn't beg to be heard. Truth simply stands, unshaken, unmoved, unafraid. And in that moment, everything they built on the foundation of lies crumbled without a sound. Not because I destroyed it, but because lies collapse on their own weight. The minute truth walks in, I didn't clear my name. My name cleared me. And the fear that once lived inside me flowed out, like dust swept from a chamber long abandoned. This was the moment they realized something vital. You cannot break a person who has rebuilt themselves from their own ashes. They wanted me gone, silent, forgotten, erased like a name, washed away by the tide. But tides return, always, stronger, wider, wilder, and I returned the same way, not to prove anything, but to breathe as myself again. The world stood still when I stepped forward, not because I was loud, but because I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear was a luxury I had paid for in full. Now I carried only clarity. I walked through the stable yard, where desert wind kissed the flags overhead, and every heartbeat of the horses matched my own, steady, rising, alive. This was my resurrection, not from death, but from the silence they buried me under. I rose differently this time, not angry, not wounded, not chasing justice, just unbreakable. They tried to whisper, "Tarnish him." Life answered, "Watch him shine." They tried to block my path, but destiny moved them aside, like dunes shifting before a desert storm. What they never understood was, my strength was not born from the pain they caused. My strength was ancient, carried in my blood, carried in my breath, carried in every mile I've run beside the horses I love. I rose because the sun doesn't ask permission to rise. It simply does. And as I stood there, the world finally saw what they had tried to hide. A man shaped by storms, not defeated by them. My silence was mistaken for surrender, but silence was simply my preparation. Now I speak, I walk, I rise, with a truth too bright for their shadows to survive. And the same hands that once trembled are steady now, ready to build, ready to rise, ready to reclaim every piece of myself they thought they had stolen. This was my rise, not dramatic, not loud, but unstoppable. For years they tried to quiet my voice, not with walls, not with chains, but with doubt. And doubt, that is the softest prison a man can be trapped in. But what they never knew was, my voice was carved from the same silence they used against me. Every moment I stayed quiet, my truth was sharpening itself, like a blade waiting for the right dawn. And today, that dawn arrived. I spoke not to fight, not to expose, not to take revenge, but to free myself from the weight of stories stolen from me. My voice rose, like the Arabian sun, slow, majestic, unbothered by the darkness that came before it. At the stall, where noble horses move like poetry in motion, my words finally found air wide enough to fly in. I said every truth with the calmness of a man who has nothing left to hide and everything left to protect. They looked at me with the same fear a liar feels when honesty walks in the room. Because truth doesn't shout. It exposes. Quietly. Completely. My voice was steady. Grounded. Carved from every scar they gifted me. And that voice, the one they tried to bury, became something even I couldn't have imagined. It became a beacon. A reminder. A declaration that I survived. Not because they failed to break me, but because I learned how to rebuild myself from every broken piece they left behind. And now when I speak, the world listens. Not because I am loud, but because I am true. This is the voice they can't silence anymore. This is the man they never expected me to become. I didn't just reclaim my story, I reclaimed my sound. And the desert winds carried it farther than their shadows could ever reach. Today I stand, not as the man they tried to break, not as the story they tried to rewrite, but as the truth they feared would one day surface. The desert felt wider today, the wind warmer, the sky deeper, as if the world itself knew I was finally stepping out of a silence that was never meant to hold me. I walked past every memory they tried to poison, every moment they tried to twist, every chapter they tried to erase. And with each step, another weight fell off my shoulders, not with anger, but with understanding. Because truth isn't heavy, hiding it is. The horses at the stall raised their heads as I passed, as if recognizing the shift inside me. A man finally free from the shadows that did not belong to him. And when I began to speak, my voice didn't tremble. It flowed, clear, calm, clean like desert rain. I didn't name them. I didn't shame them. I didn't expose them. Life will take care of its own justice. I only told my truth. The truth they hid. The truth they twisted. The truth they feared. I told the world that silence is not surrender. That patience is not weakness. That kindness is not blindness. I told them that the strongest hearts are forged in the fires lit by others. And I told them that every storm I survived became the wind that now pushes my destiny forward. Today I didn't seek revenge. I found release. Today I didn't fight them. I found myself. And as the world listened, I finally understood. The truth doesn't free you. When people believe it, it frees you. When you stop hiding it. And that freedom was all they ever feared. So here I stand in the open. Unafraid. Unbroken. Unashamed. This is my truth. This is my rise. And this is the end of the story they tried to bury. Now let the world decide what rises higher, their lies, or my truth. Sparkles, if you felt this journey, then leave your heart in the comments. Your one comment can become someone else's courage. Sparkles.